All right. Steven, Scotty, Ekonova, what's going on, bro? From
What's
afar,
up,
it's nice
man?
to see you.
I know it's good to see you too. I haven't seen you in person for a while. The last time you were at the house, you were with Mo,
Yep.
but I locked myself in my room because I was social distancing hardcore.
Right, right,
So I
right.
heard you, but I didn't see you.
Right. Yeah, we were working on his live stream at the time, so I was just kicking it there and making sure everything was
Yeah.
running smoothly. So yeah, I saw you did a live stream with Relentless Beats and a couple other artists not too long ago.
hmm
What was the process of that versus doing it at your house?
Super different. When I'm at my place, I just find whatever I can around me. Like I have these cool little bamboo plants that my girlfriend got me, and I use that
Right,
to try to decorate as best I can. But
right,
when I'm working with someone else, there's some more resources and we can make it look a little more exciting. Because like all I do really is music. Like I
right.
I don't invest time into making my setup cool or appealing or like my room. I don't know how well you can see it. Like my walls are
You can feel
bare.
free
Like
to
all
pan around if you want to.
yeah, dude. Like it's like all like
Yeah.
everything right there on that wall is just like to do stuff and collaborations that I have to work on and collaborations that I have like on my like dream list. But
Interesting. Okay.
it's like
Well,
the most decoration I have.
before we jump into that, I'm gonna ask you a couple random questions, just
Cool.
for the sake of keeping things congruent with all the other podcasts. And let me pull these up. All right, hold on. There's a
No
really
problem.
good random question generator that I like to use. There's a
What is
really
it?
bad one that pulls
Just
up.
a
Let me see.
website?
I'll tell you the name. Yeah, it's just a website. I Google
Cool.
it, and then I think it's the second link down. But I find using these random question generators is puts people on the spot, get some answers that you wouldn't normally hear out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I'm eager,
You're curious, yeah. Okay,
curious.
here's your three. What's your opinion on tipping?
On tipping. This is amazing already.
I love it.
Until until I had friends who worked in the service industry,
Right.
I didn't understand it and I thought that it was unfair to the patron who was going to the restaurant and to the waiter or the waitress.
Why
I just
is
thought the
that?
system was messed up.
Oh, okay. From top down, I thought you meant it was unfair to the server to tip them.
No, no, no.
You thought it was
So
unfair that the business wasn't paying the servers enough for them.
totally.
Okay, I see what you're
Totally. And so then there was a bit of resentment on my end to the business. Like, why can't we just pay
saying.
like normal places? But
Right.
now that I have several friends who are in the service industry, there's some more empathy there. And I'm like, I understand it a bit more. I have a clearer picture.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I understand that. I started working in the restaurant industry when I was like 16. My first job was as a host, and then I got moved to server. And my dad actually, one of his jobs when he was struggling as an immigrant was a bartender. So every time we would go out as a family and stuff like that, my dad was always tipping like 30%, 35%. So I guess I kind of picked up my view on tipping
Wow.
just from watching him do what he does. A lot of people are struggling, man, when it comes to those serving jobs, and especially now with coronavirus and everything going on. You know what I mean? A lot of servers won't even get their jobs back. It doesn't seem like so.
This is true. Yeah, I have a few friends going through that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, difficult. Okay, next one. What part of history do you find most interesting?
Oh, that's interesting. Like a time period?
Yeah,
Hmm. These are such cool questions already.
right.
They're very miscellaneous. That's hard to answer. If I could say now, I would say now because I think this is probably the best time to be alive in general. I mean,
Okay.
not the last 4 or 5 months, but in general, this is probably the best time to be alive. But other than that, because it's a cop out kind of answer, um, maybe when classical music was really relevant because that aligns with my interests.
Gotcha.
Maybe like during the Baroque period, something along those lines.
Okay.
Be cool just to see harpsichords being everywhere instead of pianos. That'd be kind of neat
Okay. I mean, we'll have to double back and talk about that. Definitely want to talk about that.
for sure.
Next question. If it was possible to transplant your brain to stay alive for another 100 years, would you? And it's funny that this question popped up because this generator gave me that question for Mo yesterday as well.
Oh, how funny.
Right.
Uh, I
What
don't think I
contrast?
would.
You don't?
I don't know. That reminds me of Futurama, by the way. I don't know if you've watched Futurama, but they
I
have
have.
all the celebrities and heads just in like jars. So
Yep.
funny. But uh, I've always found the idea of of being immortal kind of scary.
Okay.
I remember I think it was called Tuck Everlasting, I think is the name of this book. I had to read in elementary school.
Hmm.
So I've always kind of thought about it just on and off over the years since I read it. And it was about this guy, or maybe he's his family. I think just a guy. And he never aged. So he would have to leave his community and move every few years because otherwise people would kind
Mm,
of start realizing he wasn't aging
right.
and they would have questions and he would just like be stuck. Um, So I've always found the idea of immortality kind of scary. So an extra 100 years, I don't know if we're meant to live that long, at least not yet. Like I want to live until I'm 100. I
Okay.
know I would like to live that long, but maybe let's have you refine the question a little bit. Like let's say I live 200 years.
Okay.
Am I living to 200 years in that 100-year-old state?
Yeah. So that was my turn point on the conversation yesterday with Mo as well. Was like my thing about it is what is my quality of life going to be like over that
Totally.
the course of that 100 years? Like, am I still going to be able to do things for myself? Am I living in a state where like I have to depend on other people to do things for me and things like that? I think that's where I would make the differentiation on that answer for myself. But yes, for the sake of the question, let's say that you live to be 100, you have to live another 100 years at the same rate of deterioration that you've come to know on your way to 100.
No way.
Okay, all right,
No way.
that's fair because I would agree with you personally.
I I think life is a gift. I think life is amazing, but at 100 years old, I feel like that's just the quality of life isn't there.
Right. And I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think one of the things that makes life a gift in general is the fact that mortality is a thing.
Yes. Okay. I was trying to figure out how to mention that. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to sum it up.
Right.
Just the same way that if people didn't have bad days, the good days
Mhm.
wouldn't feel as good. It's the
Right.
same kind of concept. So yeah, I think the fact that there is that punctuation point, it changes your whole perspective on just how you're living.
Whether it's a period or an exclamation or a question mark at
Or a
the end of
question mark.
it. That's the big tipper at the end of it.
That's the big tipper.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to talking about your room and the fact that you have nothing on the walls. I find that
Yeah,
extremely interesting because as a creative person and when it comes to your music, your creativity shines through like no other. And that is a testament to what you've been able to do in the music industry thus far throughout your career. And your career has been
thanks,
what?
man.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years long, roughly 2 to 3 years long, you would say is your current um, alias and
Yeah,
career in that sense.
Ekonovah is about 2 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And then how long prior to that have you been making music for?
I started I want to say late 2012, in October 2012, I believe.
Okay. So
So
you've been
we're
around
almost at
music for
eight
quite
years.
some time.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You've been around music for quite some time then.
Yeah, definitely. Before I was producing, I was still writing music in bands, and before that, I was writing my own compositions on piano. Like
Okay.
my parents enrolled me in piano lessons when I was like 2. So
Got you.
it's always been around me.
Got you. So would you say your music is more based on melody because of that? Or would you say you're like where does your stance on production come from? Like what do you like to focus on when you're producing? Where do you start a project?
Um, it's a funny question because musically, melody is what gets me fired up.
Okay.
That's my favorite part about music is melody, and that might sound like a really basic answer,
Hmm.
but in EDM, I mean, you can make such cool music with just the sound or just bass without like a bass line without even having much of a melody.
100%.
Um, so yeah, when I'm starting on a track and I'm looking for that inspiration, just trying to get into that state of flow. Ironically, it isn't always melody that drives that. Sometimes it's just the way that a bass that I made sounds. And it's like this really low end resonant kind of hum that for some reason that'll get me more fired up than a cool melody. So it really, but sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's a melody. So it depends on whatever I'm working on at the moment, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay, individually the tracks. Okay, then that segues me into talking again about your room. So as a creative, and again, we can see how creative you are through your music. Have you just felt a lack of creativity in a visual aspect? Like, do you not feel as though like visual creative is your thing, or what is it that keeps you from? Because a lot of musicians, I feel like, use visual stimulus to get ideas for things and to work
Totally.
off of that, and it doesn't seem like that's something you do at all, or at least from the look of your room it doesn't seem like that's something.
I know it really is. It's laughable in here because it looks like it's just so bare. But um, I would say that I definitely invest a lot of effort into the artwork that I make for Ekonova. So there is a visual
Right.
component. It's just that I don't necessarily care about the visuals around my physical space. I really just care about what I'm making. So if
Mm,
I'm working on a song, I care how that sounds. If I'm making visuals for one of my tracks, I care about how that looks.
mm-hmm.
But when it comes to my room, I guess I don't have a lot of, it's just not a priority really. Because if I invest time into that, then I'm also investing some of my creative energy, and that might deplete my creative energy when I'm ready to work on a song, and I don't want to do that.
Interesting.
But I'll pan my camera over here. My girlfriend made me this, and that's
Yeah.
the only bit of art I have on my
That's the one
wall.
piece that you have in
Um,
there.
that's the only thing that is contrasting against the white walls. But
Right.
uh, something that I've always wanted to do, I just haven't really pulled the trigger yet. I would really love my studio space or whatever room I'm in to work on music. I would love just to decorate the walls with local art and not
Okay.
really much beyond that. Just support the artists in my community who are making really cool visual art and have no theme in my room whatsoever. Just local art. I think that would get me really fired up, but I
We'll
just
have
haven't done
to
that yet.
we'll have to get you a PO box at some point in time to make that happen, so people can just send over whatever they're
Ooh,
making. Right?
I
That'd be the best
love
way to
the
decorate
sound
your
of
room, I
that.
think. Um.
I love the sound of that. Yeah, it'd be really cool to do that.
Okay. When it comes to so if you don't have visual stimulus that helps you come up with like song ideas and develop an idea for a track that you're making or a EP or an album, whatever it might be, what is your main source of stimulus? What gives you that initial like idea to start something?
Sometimes it's forced, but like sometimes you just sit down and you've had kind of a bland day, but
Right.
then I'll write something that I really like. But as I'm answering that way, I guess I'm kind of realizing that everything comes from something else. So from the day prior or a week prior, I might have seen something that was sparking inspiration like retroactively.
Okay.
Um, so I think really anything that you do that has any ounce of creativity or artistry to it can be reinvested into whatever creative endeavor you're doing. Or maybe it's not even an endeavor, maybe it's just even as simple as just like creative thinking or creative problem solving with something that isn't inherently or socially viewed as creative.
Okay.
But for example, I really been enjoying cooking lately. So I think cooking a little more audacious meals allows me to think a little differently when I come back and to work on a song. Or maybe I'll look for music that I wouldn't otherwise seek out, like genres that I wouldn't normally listen to,
Right.
or artists that I haven't heard before.
Right.
Um, Even just like cool YouTube videos that have kind of a nice artistic aesthetic to it. Just like anything that you consume or make that isn't your primary creative focus, I think can subconsciously like incubate, and then you can reinvest it later.
Okay. Okay. And then let's go into what do you have going on right now? What are you working on currently?
My primary focus as of maybe like a month or two ago has been my own vocals. I've been doing a lot of singing
Interesting.
and a lot of just my actual vocals, which I'm really excited about because it's so different for me, and it's still pretty new, and I don't even have a mic. Like I have an iPhone 6,
You're
and that's
recording
what I
with
used.
that?
I put it
Wow.
in have a cupboard in my closet. I just surround the cupboard with blankets and pillows and
Right.
stuff the phone in there, and I get a half decent recording that way. And then it takes a lot of work to process it. But um, one of those tracks, in fact, the first one that I started that way, I finished it um, about a month ago, and then a week later, it already got signed, which I can't really talk about too many details there yet. But that's the fastest that I've ever written a song and then gotten it signed. That it was like immediate positive affirmation, which feels so good. But
Yeah.
I've just been working on a lot of lyrics and a lot of just original vocal melodies, singing in the shower a lot, just trying to get things percolating, just which I used to do,
Right.
and I stopped when I became a producer. I stopped singing in the shower, which is funny because when I was a kid, I would sing in the shower all the time. And then now that I'm doing more vocal stuff, I'm noticing that I'm singing in the shower again, just to keep ideas flowing.
So with that said, would you say that this is it's a difficult question for me to ask, because I know a lot of the time it doesn't come off the right way when you're talking to a creative, because I know no creative person really wants to be pigeonholed into a certain genre or like a certain
Mm.
type. But would you say that your aim is to be in EDM, or are you trying to expand yourself outward and kind of wander into different genres? Like, what is your long term goal or your long outlook for what you want to create? Not from a marketing perspective or what's easier to sell or whatever, just like, what do you enjoy making most, and where do you see that taking you?
It's a good question, because like questions like this you don't really ask yourself until someone presents it to you. So
Hmm.
you don't really have an answer on the tip of your tongue. But I know that house music is and has always been my favorite. I've deviated from it before. I've made other genres before. I work with singer-songwriters, and I make pop, and I make like hip hop and stuff like that.
Right.
But house music is always my number one. So whether or not I change gears and it's a little more vocal heavy, I still think it's always going to sit on that foundation of the four on the floor kick drum beat, the quintessential house format. Not
Okay.
because it's not necessarily the sound of it as a genre, but just like as a musical, well, I guess as a genre, as just like the musical skeleton of what it
Something of a
calls
guideline.
for.
Something of a guideline for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it's good to have an outlook with whatever creative project you're doing to anticipate growth and a change, and not just a change to follow fads, but a change to follow wherever you're moving and
Mhm.
wherever you decide to take things. Um, but yeah, I definitely, at least right now, I see myself staying in the EDM sphere,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that my music would not appeal to a non-EDM listener. At least the stuff I've been making recently.
You're right.
I think
And
it might appeal to someone else who doesn't really know a lot about electronic music.
right. And I mean, we've had personal conversations. I mean, you and I have, for those of us who are watching who, know nothing about me and know nothing about you, you and I have known each other for almost 3-4 years now. And we've had personal
Yeah.
conversations where we talk about artists like Lido, for example,
Oh,
kind of walks that line that you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
he walks a very fine line between, like, you can't sectionalize him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
His music, his style, it's something that can really appeal to just about anyone if they're listening for it and they like quality music. And that's kind of what I hear coming from you as like your goal as an artist, I guess.
Lido is a genius.
I
Not in
agree.
just his ability to reach so many demographics
Right.
and have such a wide cast net of listeners,
Hmm.
but the music and the sonics of his music are just so impressive. Every time he releases a new song, I'm just so excited to hear it. Um,
I agree.
and I don't know if I anticipate my tracks being in that sphere where
Hmm.
it's that ambiguous, because his stuff is pretty ambiguous.
Right.
It's EDM, it's hip hop, it's pop, it's sometimes in the middle of his songs it goes totally acoustic.
Right.
So I think mine will be a bit more formatted,
And more
just because that's
directional, I
kind of the
guess.
style that I like more. Yeah, yeah, but um, regardless of where things end up, this is by far the most excited I've been personally with my own stuff, and it's just like all this EDM stuff is fun, but just something that I've been really longing for a while is just some heart and soul in the music. And kick drums are cool and basses are cool, and it's fun to be hyped up when you're at a festival and you're with your friends and everyone's dancing to a kick drum and some bass. There's a time and a place for that. It's really important. I'm not trying to belittle that style at all, but for me, I just kind of started losing interest making that when I was in the studio.
Right.
So now that I'm writing stuff that has more of a story, I don't know, I just feel more fulfilled making it.
Right. Right. As far as story goes too, you have I don't know if you're still doing it or not, but you had Storytime Radio, for example.
Yes, Storytime Radio for sure. That's still going on.
Okay. It seems like story is something that you enjoy a lot, being able to have like a something to go with, something to flow with. Where did that come from? Were you interested in movies as a kid? Did you like reading and gather story from there? What was your influence on stories?
It's so funny you say that because I hate reading.
Okay.
I absolutely hate it. I have a really hard time comprehending, and I'm synesthetic, which makes it difficult for me to actually read and comprehend.
What is synesthetic for those who don't know what that means?
It's when you cross two or more senses together. For example, if I listen to music, I will see it in my mind's eye, or if I read, I associate a pitch or a letter with a pitch in my head.
Interesting.
So if I read a sentence, if I pay attention, there's like a melody that's playing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to focus.
Okay.
But I've always hated reading, probably for that reason. And I've never really been much of a movie person either, which is funny because I do like story. Maybe I like storytelling as an art form, not so much filmmaking or literature, but I just like storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that's always been present, like my name, Ekonovah. Like before, I've had other aliases where the names just didn't mean anything, and I found that to be very uninspired as time went on, and I would just get kind of sick of trucking along with some name that had no sentimental value to me. But Ekonovah, long story short, it's supposed to be two words: echo, nova, sound, new. So I just put those two, and it's supposed to mean like new sound. So I guess since I began this project, there's been some sort of like deeper meaning, some sort of deeper story.
Right.
So I guess it's part of the foundation of it. So I knew I wanted to do story time when I first started. And in fact, I made this one track that was kind of inspired the entire direction of Ekonovah, which was, It's the first track that I made in the first Storytime episode. And it's the intro. And it hasn't been released yet. And in fact, it's still kind of laying on my hard drive. I don't know where I'm going to take it yet. I need to finish the song. But it's like, right now, it's an intro with a drop that I don't like anymore.
Okay.
But this intro has such a cool melodic texture to it, and it kind of tells the story just without lyrics.
Right.
And that's been the whole path I've been taking. So to answer your question, I don't know why I like telling stories or where that comes from, but I like sending some sort of message through sound and through music.
Okay. And that makes me excited to see your first full format album, if that's something you ever plan to do. Because
totally.
It is? Okay. See, that makes me excited for when you do a full format album, because a lot of the time I may not be the biggest, I'm not going to say it that way. Let me rephrase here. I may not be as adamant about paying attention to the EDM scene as I might be with hip hop. Mm-hmm. But when I listen to albums in hip hop, I consistently notice that the albums I enjoy the most are the ones that I can listen to cover and feel like I went through a story with that artist. Like
yes.
I feel like they were talking to me, or they were taking me through something as they were going through the album song by song. And I feel like that in itself is an art form that separates certain artists from others. So it makes me excited to know that you have that outlook, and that that's something I can trust you're going to implement into an album when you do end up doing it.
Definitely. Not only does that, I don't remember what you said, but it segments, what did you say? It segments certain artists from each other?
Yeah, it separates certain artists quality-wise, at least from my personal perspective.
Yeah.
It's opinion-based, I get that. But me personally, and having, I listen to a lot of music, specifically hip-hop. I listen to a lot of it. And I like to listen to music, when new songs come out or a new album comes out, I listen to the album cover to cover. Okay.
That's the
Every
way to
single
do
time,
it.
no matter what. Because in my mind, an artist has formatted those songs, put them in a certain order for a specific reason.
Hmm.
And I would be doing it, an injustice by not listening to the entire album cover to cover at least once.
Totally agree. At
Yeah.
least once too. Yeah. Because
Right.
that's, in many cases, that's how it's supposed to be consumed, is one sitting for like an hour or so.
Right. And I mean, for
That's
me, that sitting is me in my car driving around. So
totally,
yeah.
totally same here. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love, you like driving at night?
Yeah.
You just
100%.
listen to music? Yeah. I'll
100%.
do that, especially during quarantine. I've been doing that a lot more. Just
Oh yeah.
going for a little joyride for like 45 minutes to an hour, just listening to new music. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Hip hop artists. Yeah. Go right ahead.
what I wanted to mention is that not only can that segment different artists from one another, because you can kind of see, okay, who's making bangers and who's making like meaningful bodies of work. And there's one isn't right, one isn't wrong. There's two different things.
Right.
Um, what I wanted to touch on is that's one of the interesting things about electronic music and the whole EDM scene is it kind of relies on this ecosystem of singles. And
Mm,
only recently have we actually been seeing albums come out. And I think that's one reason that it's had a hard time um, entering the mainstream over the last few decades, is because they're just singles, and to an untrained ear, a lot of it sounds the same
right.
rhythms, same ideas, just like slightly tweaked, different vocal takes that are like 5 seconds long,
Hmm.
especially like in those like 90s soulful songs. So that's one reason that I guess it's been underground for so long, and it's had a hard time reaching a wider audience. But lately we've been seeing a lot more albums um, from electronic artists. I don't know if we've seen any like concept albums yet, but I think that would be pretty interesting.
I think the only concept album that comes to mind is I believe Jaws had one come out like maybe a year or two ago
I think
that
you're
I
right. I think you're right. That
love.
was concept.
And then as well as The Ineffable Truth, G. Jones album.
Oh man, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a hypocrite for a minute. I
Okay,
listened
go
to
ahead.
half that album and I got sidetracked, and I haven't finished it.
Definitely need to. I went to his tour concert for that album, and he played basically the whole album cover to cover. I'm pretty sure, and it was amazing. Honestly, it makes me think a lot of the way you operate, in the sense of like wanting to have a cohesive story being told, even with your shows. The lighting, the visuals, the music, everything, even the setting, like the location he chose for that. Now, whether that was forced by the ticket sales or by the cost of the venue, any of those things, I don't know.
Where was it?
It was at Monarch,
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
right?
I
So
know the
very
one. Yeah,
very secluded, kind of like tight, very closed off, and I for it just worked perfectly. You know what I mean? It worked
yeah.
so well. Everything felt like it was meant to be together, and it was done so well. And that's something I think about when I think about your music, right? And again, going back to that storytelling aspect, it's like it all comes together in those shows as well if you do it the right way.
Totally agree. You saying that made me wonder something about you, because I know I like the way you approach music and the way that you just the opinions you form around it. I'm so curious, who is your favorite live performance that you've ever seen,
My favorite live performance I've ever seen.
and when was it?
That's going to take me a second to think about. Because I've seen a lot of different genres too. So in high school, I
Yeah.
came up as a metalhead. I was like really into post-hardcore, pop punk, stuff like that. I went to Warped Tour 5 years in a row.
Wow. I don't know
Yeah,
if I knew that about you,
yeah,
about going to Warped Tour so much.
oh yeah, I was super, super into it. And we were going to like shows at the Nile and stuff like that, on Wednesday nights where there was like no one there. So a lot of those shows have a really special place with me because they were very intimate. And a lot of the bands that I saw at
Totally.
that time ended up growing a lot. And then I would see them on larger stages. So that has a special place. Um,
That's really cool. How old were you when you were going to those shows?
I started going when I was 14 or 15.
Wow.
Yeah, I had an
Okay,
older
yeah, that's
friend.
you had an older friend who got you in?
Yep, yeah, and he would drive me to the shows, take me to them, and everything. So he really got me into it. And I was
What a
also in a
guy.
band at the time. He was the
You were in a
drummer.
band?
Yeah, he was the drummer for the band,
Okay.
and he would drive me to and from school every day. He was a year older than I was, And one day after school, he had band practice and their singer didn't show up. And he was kind of like, hey, can you like sit in on vocals? Because I know you know these songs. It was a cover band for like Blink 182 and Sum 41 and stuff like that. So he knew I knew the songs and the lyrics. So he asked me to fill in for vocals just to help out so they could actually have a decent practice. And at the end, he was like, you want to be our singer? So
What?
yeah, quite literally how that worked out. Handed me
I
a
did not know
binder.
this.
Yeah, he handed me a binder with all of the lyrics and the songs and everything, and he was like, go to town. So I did that for a little bit, and um, I want to say that my favorite performance was the American Dream Tour, which was based around that post-hardcore era, and it was the headliners were Of Mice and Men and Bring Me the Horizon together, who at the time were the two biggest names in that genre.
Yeah.
And the fact that they went on a tour together and they co-headlined a show was just incredible to me.
I'm not super, I guess I was never really super aware of that scene and that culture at that time. So was tour like co-headlining and like collaborations of that genre were pretty unheard of. Like was a co-headline unheard of too?
From my understanding, yeah, that was the first time that I'd ever encountered something like that.
That's pretty cool.
And the whole lineup, even the openers were crazy good. Like Issues was a band that was coming up at that time that I was really into, and that was one of the openers for them. So their ability to pick bands that were really good and just somehow bring them all together to work was, amazing by me. But if I were to say, like something outside of that genre, something that people would be more attuned to, I guess, I'd probably say Linkin Park, and that was my first band ever. That was the first concert I ever went to, and that had that sense of cohesion, just like all of their albums have ever had.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me, and I think maybe that's one of the big influences on the way I listen to music, is the fact that Linkin Park was one of my big influences to begin with from a young age.
That must be that must inform a lot of how you perceive music now.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question the right way.
Yeah, it totally did. That was an interesting answer. I didn't expect that, but that's cool.
Yeah. So I think what you're doing is necessary for music. Not to say, like you said, it definitely has its place. All of the other, the singles that come out that get people moving and jumping and doing their thing has its place for sure. But even yesterday with Mo, I was talking about how like the integrity of creativity is something that needs to be guarded, because it's definitely under fire by a lot of different people in a lot of different spaces.
That's a great way to say that. It needs to be guarded. And it's under attack just by the very nature of like how the industries work and how business operates and how marketing works.
100%.
Because people want to be relevant. People want to make stuff that's going to sell well, because we're all trying to make a living doing this.
Yeah. And so I think what you're doing is special because it's only every so often you find an artist that has that. It's not something that you have to teach them. It's like, this is a part of you. This is a part of what you want to do within music. This is a part of why you make music in the first place. You know what I mean? It's not forced upon you to be a storyteller. It's just something you like to do. And it really harbors that creative integrity that I think any genre of music or any genre of film or any creative genre in general really needs, especially at this point in time in like creative history, I guess.
I totally agree. And one more thing on this point.
Yeah.
I think probably the best artists, I say probably because it's not like I've really given this a ton of thought before, but I think the best artists in any genre know how to make those really sentimental songs where like you listen to by yourself and they're profound and they make you think. They're very thought provoking. But the same artist can make songs that are very anthemic and an entire crowd can sing together, and it's the kind of music you listen to with your friends in the car, or it's the kind of music that you like shuffle to really hard in a club.
Right.
So like there really isn't one that's better than the other. And they're best when they're paired together, especially in a live performance or in an album, because then you're getting the best of both worlds. It's not like you don't want to just be preached to with stories the whole time.
Right.
And you don't want to only be dancing. Like both have their time and place.
Right. I'm a big proponent of balance and everything, and that balance there is necessary for sure. So let me double back and ask you the same question. Who is the best live performance you've ever seen? And beyond that, That concept we were just talking about an artist who can tell a story but also get people moving.
Mm.
Who's the most prominent in that aspect that you know of or that you like to listen to?
Two names came to mind instantly.
Let
So
me
it's going to
guess
be
one of them.
guess.
Porter Robinson?
No, I haven't seen Porter live actually.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Um, Skrillex and San Holo.
Oh, I should have guessed Skrillex.
I
Oh,
love, yeah, I think you know Skrillex is my favorite artist, I
oh
think.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty biased there to say that he was one of my favorite live acts, if not the favorite. I saw him last year when I played at EDC. I was at Circuit Grounds and I got to see him for the first time. So it was just an amazing, that might be part of the reason that I thought it was so amazing, because it was my first time at EDC, my first time playing EDC.
The shock and
And
awe in general.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
had never been in a crowd that big. I'd never seen a stage that tall.
Right.
So it was just a real, just like sensory overload. Plus, I get to see my favorite artist, and I knew I was playing the art car later that night. So it was just a very euphoric memory, a very euphoric few hours.
Right.
But dude, his sets, I've seen his sets online before, and like I'll just like be cleaning my room or doing chores, and I'll turn it on and I'll catch myself dancing because I just love the music so much. He does a great job of blending story with just like hype. He does a really,
Right.
and he's a really good MC at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, his performances are wild. In fact, before we just called, coincidentally I was listening to his set from Ultra
Oh,
in
that's awesome.
2015.
That's awesome.
Yes, that was incredible. And then where was it? I think it was Gold Rush 2017. I think.
So if you're gonna cite San Holo's set from Gold Rush 2017, I'm gonna fully agree with you because I was there.
And we were hanging out. I think
yeah.
we were in the same group that for those few hours at the main stage.
Yep, that was incredible.
Dude, it was unreal.
The guitar,
I'll never forget. He finished playing one of his tracks, and then before he hit play on a different song, he just started playing some random little tune on his guitar, and he was like, "Sorry guys, just like felt like playing that, like just like felt a little bit inspired. Just thought I'd play that for a minute."
Yep.
And yeah, that was a really looking back, I think that has really informed a lot of my decisions musically so far is San's performance, and also where I plan to take Ekonova in the future with, I don't want to reveal too much yet, but with some live components that I see myself using in the future. So yeah, those two performances, if I could marry that San Holo performance and the Skrillex performance and then add, like change the music to house, that's where I'll be. That's what I'll be doing.
It's a good thing you have those two examples to set for yourself, because now it feels like you have a decent picture of what you want to shoot for.
Totally, yeah. It's really clear in my mind, and I feel bad for artists in the past. Like I, in this time, am fortunate enough that I get to consume music from amazing artists like San Holo and Skrillex, because now I can use what they've made to inspire where I want to go.
Right.
And at least, and I only mean in the EDM sphere. At the time, they didn't have people to look up to in that same, or they didn't have such a big pool to observe from. Like they had
much
to
smaller sample size.
Yeah, they had to pioneer that path to get to where they are. So it's cool to like just look at some of these top names and then hybridize them and kind of say like, oh, I like the hybrid. Maybe I'll just do that.
Right. I mean, I guess that's a big component of being a creative in the first place. You know what I mean? And I've talked about this on the podcast before in regards to what it means to grow as a person, not as a creative, but it applies to creativity as well, I guess, because you want to be able to take bits and pieces from different things that inspire you and create your own image out of it, you know?
Totally.
So,
which is probably, if not the only, just one of a few ways that creativity is even birthed. Is just from just using stepping stones, finding that inspiration, kind of how we talked about earlier.
Right. Do you have any outlook on what shows look like in the future given the current situation? Like, have you heard anything from inside the industry about like maybe resuming any of your show? I know you had stuff booked all the way up through right now.
Yeah.
So
it's a shame, man. The most trustworthy thing to anticipate is that we just don't know what's going to happen. I'm hoping, I'll be happy if by mid 2021 I'm on tour again.
Right.
I think that's a little bit optimistic, if not just like kind of where things are going to go. But there's so many variables and so many question marks right now. It's hard to anticipate. I think local shows will be a will be emerging soon-ish,
Right.
and that'll be what occurs for a while is
Mhm.
your local artists playing your local shows, not with a bunch of touring from other states or other countries. But it's still too soon to tell. There's really no saying.
Right. So what is your plan for the time being, for the foreseeable future, to stay engaged with, your um I don't want to say the word fans, but like how do you plan on staying engaged with the people who are into your music and want to see you or hear you? What is your plan for that?
I think the best way is through, unless we're just talking about your typical social media post, which is the normal, most
Right.
ubiquitous way to communicate and engage. I have to say through live streams, but the thing that I've been considering lately is all these streams are becoming homogenous,
And it's very
and
saturated too. Everyone has a stream going on.
totally it's
Right.
saturated and homogenous, which is a horrible combination if you ask me. So
Right.
it's just not very inspiring to me, and because of these reasons. So I don't want to, I guess I'm noticing that I don't have that the drive that I did initially to do
Mhm.
streams, because I don't want to just like be I don't want to be a copycat.
Mhm.
So it feels disingenuous if I stream. So I've been brainstorming some ideas to make my streams a little more unique during this time, so I can connect with people who are supporting my music.
Right.
I've been talking with some friends who have some cool camera equipment, so we might be doing some fun video shoots. I don't know if those will be streams. We'll be doing some fun sets soon. But the most important way, and the way that I know best on how to engage with people who have been supporting me, is just full force into music like never before. Like I've been telling everyone, I'm busier now than I ever was. And in February, I know this isn't an astronomically high number, but for me, this was a total um, change in lifestyle. In February of 2020, I was traveling for over half of the month, which
Right.
was crazy for me. It was like brand new and it was really fun. And for a while, I was nervous I wouldn't like tour life, because I'm so introverted and shy, and don't really like to be in outgoing spaces for long periods of time. But fortunate for me, I loved it.
It seems
Um,
like people throughout that process for you too. Sorry to cut you off, but it seems like
you're
people
fine.
throughout that touring process have been really accommodating to you too. So I'm sure
Yeah,
that's
dude. Yeah, people are great. People really are really yeah, the whole month was amazing for sure.
okay.
But while things like that aren't happening, I'll just be working on music all the time, so that once I can travel again, once I am doing live streams um, more heavily, I'll have new content to show, new IDs to tease. That rhymed. Got to remember that. That might be the name of a new series. IDs to tease. Ooh,
I like it.
note to self.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think maybe one way, just thinking out loud, is through showing your audience things that you've been working on without really talking about it too much, just like having a casual stream and playing lots of new music. And then the people will hopefully be able to identify my sound and be able to connect the dots and say, ooh, that's like an unreleased track
Mhm.
from Ekonovah. So I think that's a cool way to engage, but not just to be like, hey, here's like a new song, like please go listen to it.
Yeah, I understand that.
Keep it a little different.
I understand that. So I want to finish this off by getting your what I'm going to consider expert advice. Although you may not consider yourself an expert, I'm gonna give you that title.
We're
Uh,
almost at 100,000 or 10,000 hours. I'm almost there.
there you go. Okay, so I'll give you that title for now, and I want to know what your expert advice is for an artist that's trying to find quote unquote their sound.
mm, mm. Trial and error
Okay.
is probably the biggest. This is such a hard question to answer. It's a question that I receive fairly often, because it's so elusive to find your sound. Like I like I said before, I wrote songs on piano. I've been in bands. I have had the Ekonova was my third EDM project name, and I produce um, songs with singer songwriters. So I have I've worked and I do work in a lot of different genres,
Right.
but I think the only way to identify your sound is to throw yourself into the music as much as you can, which was not my intention at the time, but in retrospect, I think that is what allowed me to find my sound, is working on different genres, working on lots of different tracks at once, just working at just as much as creatively and physically possible, realistically possible, because at the beginning you're not going to be any good
Right.
at whatever you're doing. You're just not going to be good. That's part of it. That's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Once you start getting good, you're good because you've had your influences. You know, like how to sound, for example, like maybe you want to sound like Skrillex. You can look up all the tutorials on YouTube on how to have the Skrillex growl. You can make it. You can sound like him. You could be a really good carbon copy of Skrillex. It's awesome. Um, but until you have those tools in your toolbox, you can't really innovate on your own yet. I think you need to develop and cultivate those skills before you can innovate. That's not to say that you could have it in you to have that vision from the get-go, but to actually lay that down out on paper so that someone can consume it the way that you're trying to make it.
They can receive it the way you intend to send it.
Thank you. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So I think that takes time and practice, and I think that's best achieved through trial and error. Like I stumbled upon my style and my sound it was just a happy accident that I found while I was sampling stuff, and my manager heard it and he said, "You should keep doing that. I've never heard that before. You should keep that up."
So that touches on my next question is obviously like a part of doing this is wanting to make sure that you're appealing to some group of people. Like obviously you don't want to appeal to everyone because at least that's my personal opinion, is I don't feel as though appealing to everyone is good. I'm going to leave that at that.
I also don't
Unless you
know if
want to
it's
comment.
genuine.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. That's a good way to phrase it. But where is that balance between knowing, okay, there are people who like this? Like, how do you start testing the waters with things that you're making to see, or do you 100% solely depend on your own ears to say, this is that sound and this is what I'm going to use?
I think this kind of has to do with that thing, the cliche statement, like learn the rules and then you'll know like which ones to break. I think
Okay.
there's a lot of truth in that, because you should always be true to yourself. You should always make the music that's inspiring you, and you shouldn't make music that you think your fans will like or that your supporters will like
Right.
just for the sole purpose of their adoration,
Right.
because where will that leave you? That you'll be burnt out in no time. um so in terms of that balance, I think if you're always staying true to yourself, but you are, at least in music, if you're staying true to yourself but you're also following the rules on, this is how my bass should sound, this is how loud a kick drum should be, you shouldn't have two vocals playing at the same time, you shouldn't have like reverb on a bass sound, like stuff like that. Like there are certain rules that you should keep intact, and if you're following these rules and it sounds good sonically, your fan base and people who actually like this style, maybe there's not even a fan base for it yet,
Right.
but I think people who have an open mind will gravitate to this style that you're trying to cultivate, this like your own signature. People will gravitate toward it as long as you are making it for you and following the rules that do need to be followed.
Okay. To make it sonically sound good. And I mean, I guess one of the beauties of EDM in my perspective, and just from my experience within EDM over the last 3, 4, 5 years, probably 4 years, closer to 4, is that people are very open-minded within EDM. That's one of the beauties of it in general, is that there is that space for people to kind of wander off and do their own thing and see if there's a market for it. And people will be genuine about giving feedback on that.
And that's probably why the EDM umbrella is so vast compared to other genres, because everything can have this electronic flair, but everyone who's listening to it listens to dubstep, to techno, to house, to,
Right.
at least a lot of people do. Like a lot, especially once you've been in the scene for a few years and you're not just introduced to it, you come to appreciate these other genres and these other subgenres. It comes a lot. You're right. It comes a lot. Comes down to the fact that a lot of these consumers are open-minded, which is awesome, because then the creators, the producers can test out new styles and new ideas that maybe in more traditional genres like rock, maybe those new ideas couldn't be so blatant or couldn't be so
Right.
ambitious. Maybe a new idea had to be as subtle as panning something, like I don't remember what song it was. There was a Beatles record, and they
Mhm.
like panning and stereo was a relatively new concept and tool that could be implemented. And one of the intros to the song, there's like a helicopter sound, I think, going from left to right, and that was revolutionary. And people were like, "Wow, this is such a new sound!" But um, like, and nowadays it's so benign. That's such a and like a no-brainer. So
Right.
what I'm trying to say is that other certain genres have more flexibility with how far you can take things. I think hip hop is another example of a genre that is really accepting of new ideas as long as it's not too overbearing. Like I think a lot of subtleties in these like groundbreaking styles go a long way in hip hop. Would you agree?
I I would agree to a certain extent.
Maybe
I think that
sonically,
I
not so
maybe
much.
yeah. I think there's a lot of pride in hip hop
Hmm.
because of where it's come from. Although nowadays we see a lot of the OGs and a lot of the legendary names in hip hop who are still around, who are still living, who are praising a lot of the creativity that comes from newer artists, which is great to see. But I feel like because of because of how marketed hip hop has become, there's a lot of ingenuine music that is being labeled as hip hop and getting a lot of attention.
Do you have an
And
example?
it, I mean, the most
You
obvious
can.
one is obvious. You know what I mean? 6ix9ine is probably the most obvious one.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's someone who a lot would regard as an industry plant. I hope you know what that terminology means. Obviously,
Yeah, for
there's
sure.
the girl named Baby Goth who is considered to be an industry plant. She's one of those people that I would consider. It just seems like that whole copycat mentality is really, really prevalent right now within hip hop because there you can be very young and gain a lot of notoriety within hip hop just based on the fact that you know how to copy a style that's going right now, and
Yeah.
that kind of perpetuates that lack of not just genuineness but ingenuity. You know what I mean? There is a lack of ingenuity in my opinion, and a lack of newness, I guess to say, within hip hop because of the fact that so many people are trying to pop off.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I guess I do hear that. I hear sonically, to cite Travis Scott, I mean like one of the biggest guys in hip hop right now, but
Most definitely.
his I'm always impressed by just how his just the production behind his records always amaze me, and they're so different from song to song, but they still sound like Travis Scott. Even if they were instrumental only, they would still sound like a Travis Scott record.
Right.
Um, so maybe in that regard, in production techniques, there's a lot of diversity. However, you're right, there is a ton of copycatting, and that's just, I mean, obviously there's so much money to be made in hip hop, and
Right.
that formula is going to be rinsed and repeated until the end of time, until
Right.
there's no more money.
Right. I guess
And I
that's where
can't
my
blame anyone for that either.
you can't, but at the same time that's where my fear comes in because I really, really, really love hip hop. And again, the storytelling aspect, the lyricism, the production, everything all together for me, for my ears, from the way my mind works, is a perfect storm. And I worry that the amount of attention that ingenuine music gets, the lack of creativity within that music that's getting all of the attention, is going to take precedent. It's going to take over. You know what I mean? The real
Interesting.
music. That's what bothers me at the core, or at least
Here is
worries me, I
a
guess.
here's a hot take. I
Go.
would optimistically argue that this copycatting hip hop style is part of the lifeblood that brings in new listeners and new fans across different demographics, who will eventually trickle down into the artists with more integrity and more creativity and more important messages to be said. Like maybe someone, I don't know how, but maybe someone just discovered 6ix9ine. They're
Right.
like, oh, this beat is hard. Let's see like other artists that I can discover, and then they go down a rabbit hole, and then they discover someone new who has a little more to be said.
Right.
So the optimist in me would argue that um, the the corporate nature of hip hop brings in new fans, and helps the smaller guys, or the guys who aren't as small, who do have a creative and artistic message. Like,
I would hope so. And I love the optimist in you because it's always there. You always have that optimism as a part of your being.
I can hear the apprehension to agree with the hot take though. I hear it in your I see it.
It's a little bit there. I mean, yeah. You see, I agree with your hot take. I appreciate that perspective. Although it gets hard to believe that that's what's actually happening when you really take a look at, although maybe that's just me being jaded, honestly, and I could see that being the case too. Maybe I'm just jaded to that perspective that I have because of what I pay attention to. But I really hope that, for example, there's this kid named Marlon Kraft who is from New York, and I don't know, he's probably 21, 22, 23, somewhere around there. The kid sounds and raps like he's got the soul of 90s hip hop in him.
I love 90s hip hop. Okay, cool.
Like his lyricism, his cadence, everything. The way he does it is so amazing, and it's so genuine, and he has a story to tell, and he as a person, like within interviews, is such a, like, you can tell he's a good person, that it bothers me that people like him aren't getting the attention of 2 million people, on their live, or 190 million views in 4 days, like stuff like that. I just wish there was a way. And that's part of the reason I do this, is because I want to be able to say that I've had a part in pushing what's really valuable, in showing what's really valuable to people, and exposing people to what is really valuable, and what is, keeping that integrity, whether it be through music or whether it be in business or anything like that. But I appreciate that perspective, and I hope you're right.
Now I see a clear picture of what you're saying. Like, the people who are quote unquote selling out, they're always going to have the bigger audience. And right. I think that's just going to be how it is until humans go extinct. I don't see that changing ever. Yeah. It's unfortunate just how it works, I guess.
Yeah. Before I sign off with you, there's a letter. It's pretty short, but you can also watch a video with a summary of it on YouTube if you want to. Go look up 1,000 True Fans.
1,000 True Fans?
Yeah. 1,000 True Fans. It's a letter by a guy named something Kelly. I forget his first name. Kevin Kelly, I believe. Where he talks about how, like, within the creative space or within business in general, all you really need is 1,000 true fans to make a living and be productive and be, live that lifestyle and do what you love. So
that is a fascinating thesis. Yeah. I'm interested.
Yeah, definitely take a look at it. And then when we get together after coronavirus to do a follow-up podcast, we'll talk about that one.
I love it. Yeah. I'll be looking it up for sure.
Awesome. Steven, where can people find you on social media? And as far as your music goes, where would you like to direct them?
All of the socials are at Ekonovah, EKONOVAH. Spotify, Instagram, everything is Ekonovah.
Perfect.
Stay tuned.
Keep an eye out and wait for him to drop some new music. And obviously, like we've had the conversation, he's definitely been working in the studio. So I'm excited to see what happens. Steven, thank you so much. We will definitely catch up and do a follow-up once all of this craziness has calmed down.
I would love that.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
All right, man. Much love. Thanks, man.
Signing off. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and we will catch you in the next one.